In this video, we're going to break down one of our high extraction recipes, and we're going to highlight any hacks along the way. You start by dropping the paper filter into the device, giving it a little tap around the edges until it settles, then dropping hot water directly onto the paper filter and smoothing out the edges with a spoon. In this particular video, we are brewing a coffee from Colombia. We are using our 10 grams to 220 mils of water recipe. So, starting with 10 grams of coffee and dropping it into the brewer. Due to the lack of bypass, we are able to use less coffee, a finer particle size and more water. So ratios in the realm of 45.5 grams per litre is now the norm as regards to ratios of 60 to 70 grams per litre. Because we are grinding on the finer side, you will generally get more clumps out of your grinder. It is a good idea to try and shake those clumps out before dropping the coffee into the brewer, or you can use a tool like a WDT to try and rake those clumps and get a nice flat even bed before you start brewing. Starting with a flat bed will optimize your brew, so preparation is key. Having a flat bed that has the minimum amount of clumps will have a direct relationship to the remainder of the brew. This is also due to the lack of agitation that the shower head will provide. For lighter roasts such as this, we are always using boiling water. Although that's not a hard and fast rule for every coffee, generally the darker the roast is, you may want to back off the heat in the water. We definitely always recommend using the shower head throughout the entire brew, and to start with you'll need to place it on ready for the bloom. The bloom is always one of the most important parts of the entire process. Generally, coffee will absorb just over twice its own weight in water, so we always aim to pour just a little bit over double the amount of coffee that we've put in. So for this example, we're using 25 mils of fresh boiling water. Here we are aiming to cover the grounds as quickly as possible. We know that CO2 will inhibit extraction, so getting rid of that as quickly as possible is key. Due to the wide surface area of the Tricolate, we can get away with using this amount of water for the bloom. What we don't want to do is use too much water in our first pour, which will result in drips coming through before the bloom is finished, and this will impart unextracted flavours in the cup. What we aim to see here is the first drips around the 30 to 45 second mark. Then we know we're on target for our total brew time of around 6 minutes. Straight after this first bloom pour, we are also agitating the coffee bed. This allows the water to spread evenly across the total surface of the dry coffee, but it also levels out the coffee ready to accept the next pour. We generally agitate just a little bit and very quickly. You'll notice that the rest of the bloom time means that capillary action can take place, wetting the rest of the coffee. Once our bloom time is over, the next pour is the rest of the water, topping the brewer up to the total brew weight. In this case, 220 grams. We're pouring slowly and consistently, letting the shower screen do its job. Once the total amount of water has been poured, we're generally leaving it a little while until we agitate the coffee for the last time. Letting the brew get going means that all of those channels can open up in the coffee bed and water can start flowing through nice and consistently. Then we come along and we agitate the brew, closing up some of those bigger channels and resettling the coffee nice and flat, ready for drawdown. Now, of course, the less coffee that you've used, the less you need to agitate. The more coffee and the higher dose that you use in the brewer, the more you will have to agitate and the longer you will have to leave it into the brew to start that agitation. Our total brew times sit anywhere around 5.5 minutes to 6.5 minutes. This is where we found on these particular coffees to have had the most success. Now, that's not to say that we haven't enjoyed brews at the 7, 8, even 9 or 10 minute mark. It just means that they're generally going to be a lot stronger and more intense. And brews under the 5 minute mark tend to be a little bit weaker, a little bit thinner, and lack sweetness. This all comes down to personal preference, and you may want to play around with the total brew time or the particle size or even the ratios. All of these things should get you to the brew strength that you enjoy the most. The whole idea of Tricolate is for you to focus on those recipes and take away the variables of human interaction. Our own interaction when brewing coffee is always going to be inconsistent and non-repeatable. We designed the brewer around taking away these variables so we could be more consistent and more even with our brewing. Now these recipes are the ones that we use to kind of almost max out the brewer. That's not to say that you can't use other recipes. You absolutely should be able to. You can definitely use the more common ratios of 60 to 70 grams per litre. Our aim here is to generally use less coffee and extract more from that coffee. When the total brew time is over and all of the water has passed through the coffee, you should end up with something that looks pretty flat. The flat bed indicates that you've had a consistent drawdown, and you should end up with an even balanced brew. As for flavour, you will notice a reduction in astringency and more juicy acidity. You will also notice a heightened tactile experience and better quality sweetness. What we have to state here is that the paper filter itself has an enormous impact on some of these brew qualities. The reason we put great emphasis on the quality of the paper filter and its manufacturing standard in Germany is because the density of the paper itself, along with the pore consistency, the quality here is unmatched, and we simply could not find anything better than this paper. Density of it means that it holds the fines and holds more of them while retaining speed in filtration. The things that we hope you take away from this video are that less is more. We've taken away certain variables so you can concentrate on your brew recipe, your particle size, and aim for that strength of brew that you really enjoy. Typically the coffees that we enjoy drinking come in at around 1.45 to 1.5% TDS strength. Now this is where we are really enjoying our coffees, and this puts us in the area of around 29 to 30% extraction yield. But you may be different. You may enjoy something stronger, or you may enjoy something weaker, and that's totally fine. And that's what we want you to focus on, taking away all of those other worries of inconsistency. To us, that's where the versatility is with the Tricolate, and that's where the enjoyment is. Thank you for watching, thank you for listening, and thank you for brewing Tricolate.